Subscribe to Dr. Nightmare channel now.
Story 1. The Target. I once worked deep in the shadows of the dark web. I won't explain how I got into it. What matters is that my job was simple, cold, and horrifying. I was paid to track down people, abduct them, and deliver them to undisclosed locations. I never asked what happened to them afterward, but deep down, I knew the answer. None of it ended well. Over the years, I became numb. What once shocked me became routine. My only concern was the generous pay. I didn't work alone either. I had a partner, an older man who called himself Dale. He'd been in the game far longer than I had. We met through one of the dark web forums. He needed someone younger and stronger to help with the more physically demanding jobs, and I needed guidance, so we partnered up. It didn't take long for us to become an efficient machine. We'd get contacted through encrypted threads, given a target and minimal background info. Then we'd scout, plan, grab, and deliver. Rinse and repeat. Each job fed our wallets, and as terrible as it was, it paid enough for both of us to live comfortably. We never made mistakes, until one night. Our employer, anonymous as always, sent us a target. A 19-year-old boy named Liam, living in a wealthy suburb. That wasn't strange. We've taken kids from rich families before. Most of them ended up ransomed or trafficked. But this job was different. The instructions were precise. Liam had no security system, but do not underestimate him. Use extreme caution. He is extremely dangerous. The most bizarre part? They demanded we use carfentanil, an elephant tranquilizer. One dose could kill a grown man. We weren't hitmen. Dale and I never crossed that line. We assumed the client was just being dramatic or didn't understand how tranquilizers worked. So we used a weaker, safer sedative instead. That was our first mistake. We began our surveillance the next day. Liam rarely left his house. He stayed inside, reading, gaming, watching TV, completely unremarkable, a shut-in. He lived with his parents, but they were never home. We couldn't see what made him dangerous. The night of the extraction, we parked our van near his house. Dale stayed up front, while I positioned myself in the back, aiming the tranquilizer rifle through the open doors. I had a perfect shot into the kitchen window. Sure enough, Liam appeared, pouring himself a glass of water. I fired. The dart struck his neck. His reaction was unsettling. He flinched slightly, but didn't scream. He pulled the dart out and looked at it, calmly, curiously. Then he turned and stared directly at me. Not through the window, at me. His green eyes locked on mine, and his expression said everything. I know you're here. Come closer. I dare you. Then he turned off the light and vanished. Dale got out of the van with the capture gear. I told him something felt wrong, but he brushed it off. He's a spoiled brat in a big house. Let's get this over with. We entered through the back door. The place was dark and eerily quiet. The kitchen was empty, save for the glass of water on the counter. No sign of Liam. We searched the house. Nothing. He should have passed out by now. Are you sure you hit him? I saw the dart go in. He pulled it out. Then where the hell is he? Before I could answer, we heard it. Heavy footsteps thudding across the second floor. They were fast, unnatural. We split up to investigate. I headed toward the living room and saw something strange. a pile of clothes on the floor. Liam's clothes. He had stripped naked. Why? No idea. There was no tactical reason. Just his clothes, neatly placed, as if he had deliberately shed them. Then Dale screamed. It was a gut-wrenching, panicked scream from deep inside the house. I sprinted toward it and found him halfway down the basement stairs, clawing at the wall. Something was dragging him downward. I only saw a shadow, long limbs and unnatural strength before it yanked him out of view. I tried the light. Nothing. Power was out. Then, the silence. Dale had stopped screaming. I knew I should run, but I couldn't leave him. I descended into the basement with my flashlight shaking in my hands. The beam revealed something I will never forget. Hanging from a metal bar was a creature. Humanoid in shape, but horribly wrong. Its arms were too long, ending in claws. Its body looked like stretched skin barely clinging to bones. Its legs were jointed in ways no human should. And in its grasp was Dale, limp, shredded, barely recognizable. The thing was eating him, ripping chunks from his body and chewing with sickening crunches. Then it looked up at me. Its face was smeared with blood. Its mouth hung open, unhinged, jagged teeth visible in the flickering light. Its eyes were sunken, but beneath the blood and twisted features, I saw something familiar. Green eyes, blonde hair, and freckles. It was Liam. The dart hadn't knocked him out because he wasn't human. Not anymore. We had been sent to capture a monster. Why the employer wanted him alive, I don't know, but as I stared into those inhuman eyes, I realized I had made a terrible mistake by not using the elephant tranquilizer. It probably wouldn't have worked anyway. The creature screeched, and I ran. I sprinted up the stairs, out the door, into the van, and sped off without looking back. I didn't stop until I crossed 3 state lines. That night, I erased my life, burned every document, emptied my accounts, changed my name, got plastic surgery, wiped every trace of who I was. I vanished. But Liam, or whatever he had become, still haunts my nightmares. Every time I close my eyes, I see that face. And I know something is still out there, somewhere.
Story 2: The Naughty List. A few winters ago, when the nights seemed colder and the bitterness in my chest had finally hardened into something cruel, I did something I never thought I was capable of. Something shameful. Something I now carry like a rotting weight chained to my conscience. I hadn't always been that person. I wasn't always the man who looked at another human being with resentment powerful enough to wish them harm. But pain, real pain, the kind that festers when love curdles into abandonment, can transform the mind into something feral. And that's exactly what happened when Emily left me. We had been together for 4 years. Through hardship and uncertainty, I stood by her. I supported her when her family disowned her, when her debts piled high, when she lost her job and spiraled into depression. I opened my home to her, helped her piece her life back together, and carried her burdens like they were my own. She had become not only my partner, but my purpose. And when she ended it, quietly, coldly, and without warning, it felt like everything I had invested had been for nothing. No screaming match, no cheating scandal, just a short message and silence. At first, I thought she might come back, that it was a momentary lapse of judgment. But days passed and then weeks, and instead of regret, all I saw on her social media was joy, laughter, new friends, new hobbies. Photos filled with light while I sunk further into the dark. It was like I had been surgically removed from her life with not even a scar left behind. I stopped eating. I stopped shaving. I stopped answering my friends. But more than anything else, I couldn't stop thinking about her face when she told me goodbye. That casual smile, that look of relief, like she had finally shed a burden. One night, after too much cheap whiskey and too many hours staring at the same pictures of her online, I opened the Tor browser. I'd used it before, years ago, out of curiosity. But tonight I wasn't curious. I was vengeful. I didn't have a plan, not really. I didn't know what I was looking for, only that I needed to feel power again. Control. I had let her have too much of my heart, and now I wanted to take something back. I browsed for hours, descending past drug forums and scam sites until I found something that caught my attention. A crude-looking page with a grainy header reading, "The Naughty List." It was themed like a twisted Christmas card. A cartoon Santa, eyes glowing red, with a bag not filled with toys but writhing bodies. The tagline read, "They know when you've been bad. Let Santa decide the punishment." The site had categories: elf surveillance, Krampus call, stocking stuffers, and finally, sleigh snatcher. It was absurd. A parody, I told myself. Just another dark web role-playing forum for bored degenerates. But something about it gripped me. Maybe it was the way the words flickered when you hovered your cursor. Maybe it was the dozens of anonymized submissions, people doxing exes, old bosses, distant relatives. Maybe it was how desperate I was to stop feeling helpless. I clicked Sleigh Snatcher. The page that loaded was stark white, but the form fields were bathed in blood red hue. There was no real explanation, just a message at the top that read, "Santa's sack must be filled. Naughty boys and girls will ride with him through the night. Provide what's needed. No takebacks. No mercy." The form asked for her name, social media links, a location, photos, and a description of her sins. I stared at it for a long time. I felt the weight of what I was doing, and for a brief moment I considered closing the page. But then I remembered the smile in her most recent photo, the one where she looked truly happy for the first time in years without me. So I filled it in. Emily Carter, 27. Instagram handle, Facebook profile. Photos, some intimate, some not. The ones we took together that no one else had seen. Location, Benton Hill, our shared hometown. I didn't include an exact address. I thought that made it okay.
Location, Benton Hill, our shared hometown. I didn't include an exact address. I thought that made it okay. And then I clicked Submit. The screen froze for several seconds, then flashed black. A single sentence appeared. Santa never forgets. He checks the list twice. Below that, in smaller, flickering font, it read, "Thank you for feeding the sack." I closed the window, cleared my browser, scrubbed the cache, and for a brief moment, I felt lighter. Not proud, not relieved, just less hollow. I told myself it was a joke, some sick interactive fiction forum. I told myself it would never lead to anything. But that didn't last long. 3 days later, 2 police detectives knocked on my door, They didn't accuse me, not directly. They just wanted to talk. Asked when I last spoke to Emily. Asked if we had broken up on bad terms. Asked if I had any reason to contact her recently. I answered as calmly as I could, told them it had been weeks, told them I had no idea where she was, which technically was true. But when they left, something inside me cracked. I tried to find the site again, typed every combination I could remember. It was gone. Not offline, gone. Scrubbed from the network like it had never existed. Then came the news. Her body was discovered nearly a week later, crammed into a crumbling chimney inside an abandoned Christmas village just outside town. The place had been condemned for years. The police only found her after a group of urban explorers called in a smell. She was naked. Her skin was marred with frostbite and something else, branding marks shaped like snowflakes and candy canes, and in her mouth, wrapped tightly in her own hair, was a handwritten note. Emily Carter, naughty, delivered, snowflake, Santa. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was numb. In the weeks that followed, I stopped leaving my apartment. I disconnected from everything and everyone. The police never came back. There were no leads, no suspects, no evidence. But I knew. I knew it was me, my submission, my cruelty. I had handed her over to something ancient and merciless that wore the skin of a joke. Even now, I don't understand what that site really was. Was it run by a cartel? A cult? A lone predator with connections? Or was it something older? Some nights, when the wind howls and the air feels colder than it should, I think about that final message. Santa never forgets. And I wonder if he remembers me too. Because sometimes, in the early hours, I hear footsteps outside my window, heavy boots crunching in the frost. Once I woke to find a single sooty handprint on my living room wall, above the fireplace I never use. Sometimes, when I sleep, I dream of a sleigh, not bright red, but dark and splintered, dragged by pale, emaciated reindeer whose eyes glow the color of old wounds. And in the back of that sleigh, I see Emily curled in the sack like a forgotten doll. Her eyes are open, and she's smiling, but not at me, at something behind me. I don't know how much longer I can live like this. I have no desire to confess, no courage to kill myself. I exist in limbo, haunted by the knowledge that I summoned something into the world and gave it a name. Maybe it was always there. Maybe it needed me to believe in it again. And now I do. I believe. Not in the kind of Santa who brings gifts, but in the one who takes people away.
Story 3. Static Signal. An expanded dark web horror story. 5,163 words, optimized for voiceover narration. Before the world became obsessed with instant answers, streaming videos, and infinite scrolls, the internet had a different flavor. It was raw, unpolished, almost mystical, a place where curiosity could be dangerous and knowledge didn't always come free. This story comes from that earlier time when the edges of the web were still rough, when doors weren't labeled, and if you knocked, you didn't always like what opened. My name is Elliot Vale, and back in college, I was the quiet tech guy. I lived in baggy hoodies and cheap headphones, my hair always one haircut past acceptable. While other students were out drinking or playing intramural sports, I was buried in my laptop, surfing places I should never have found. Not just weird forums or pirated game sites. I mean the real underbelly, the dark web. I didn't go there for drugs or weapons. I wasn't in it for the money. For me, it was about the unknown, the unseen, the things no one talks about. There was a thrill in unlocking secrets no one else even knew existed. I like to say I was chasing ghosts through code, but looking back, I think I was the one being hunted. It started on a freezing night in December, the kind of night where the silence outside your dorm window feels too complete. I was buried deep in an IRC thread about zero visibility frequencies, basically lost internet radio stations no longer broadcasted publicly, but allegedly still active in secret corners of the dark web. Most were dead air, some played bizarre music on loops, but one user, just a random string of characters, posted something different. 0x13, still active. They always listen. You don't tune into it, it tunes into you. Below it was a link. listen.deep/0x13channel.oni. It looked broken. Obscure extension, no security certificate. It shouldn't have even loaded. But it did. The screen went black, then blinked twice. No images, just a pulsing white command line that read, "Tuning frequency, please wait." And then the static started. It wasn't like normal white noise. There were layers to it, depth, movement, like listening to wind howl across a frozen canyon with something breathing just beneath it. I leaned in closer, eyes squinting at the screen. Then I heard it. A voice. Faint, garbled, whispers threaded through the static like thin wires. At first I couldn't make out any words. It just sounded like someone talking underwater, far away. Until the whisper shifted. It spoke my name. Elliot. I ripped my headphones off. The room was still. No one outside the window, no sound in the hall, just my reflection on the blank laptop screen, pale and wide-eyed. It had to be a trick, a script scraping my computer for system info. That had to be it. But the voice, it hadn't sounded artificial. There was weight behind it, like breath on cold glass. I shut the browser, cleared everything, and restarted my system. Paranoia clawed at my spine. Still, I convinced myself it was just a well-coded prank, a scare tactic, nothing more. The next night, I couldn't help myself. I went back. This time the static came faster, and so did the voice. "You're back, Elliot. Good. Now we can listen together." My fingers hovered over the power key, but I didn't press it. Something about the voice, it wasn't threatening. Not exactly. It sounded curious, like it had been waiting for me. The screen changed again. A line of code scrolled by. Connection, SYN. Listening, active. Echo signal detected. Then came the whisper. "We found another one. Soon it will be your turn." That was enough. I killed the power, ripped the Ethernet cable out of the wall, and didn't sleep for 2 days. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. The figure, the voice, the way it had spoken to me like we were old friends, like we were bound together by some shared secret. Then, the dreams started. At first, they were just fragments, white rooms, flickering lights, muffled static, but each night they grew longer, more vivid. In them, I was always sitting in the metal chair, facing a dark mirror, and in that mirror, I'd see my reflection change, not gradually, but violently, my skin cracking like glass, my eyes leaking static, and always, just behind me, a tall figure cloaked in flickering pixels, watching. I tried to quit cold turkey, threw out my headphones, blocked the ports, deleted Tor, but the static found other ways in. I'd hear it on dead TV channels. I'd hear it when I stood near reflective surfaces. Once, while riding the campus shuttle late at night, I glanced at the security camera feed in the corner, and for a brief second, I saw the chair. That same flickering chair on the screen, replacing my seat. I blinked. It was gone. I started to unravel. I stopped attending classes. Friends stopped calling. I avoided mirrors completely, covered them with sheets. But at night, I'd still hear the whispering. Through the walls, through the pipes, through the floor. One night, desperate, I reached out to an old user I remembered from the dark web threads, SpectralNet. He'd posted about similar signals before. I sent him everything, screenshots, audio logs, descriptions. He replied within an hour. You accessed channel 0x13. It's not a broadcast, it's a beacon. They don't transmit information, they transmit frequency awareness. Once you're tuned, they begin mirroring your presence. Turn off all screens, destroy reflective surfaces, don't let your own signal amplify. Then another message. If you hear the humming, it's already too late. That night, my laptop, powered off and unplugged, turned on by itself. The same window opened, same pulsing text, but now it read, "Signal stabilized. He is coming through." The screen flashed to the live feed again. Only this time, it was my dorm room. I was in the chair, and behind me, the figure had fully emerged. 7 feet tall, wrapped in cables, its face a swirling mess of static, eyes glowing like old CRT burn-in, fingers twitching like antennae. It raised one hand and pointed. The power went out. Everything gone. I woke up on the floor, blood dripping from my nose, my ears ringing like a dying television set. My roommate found me hours later, mumbling to myself, eyes locked on the blank wall. I was hospitalized, diagnosed with acute dissociative paranoia. Nobody believed the story, and I didn't blame them. After discharge, I left college, moved in with my brother 2 states away. I changed my name, never owned another computer. But none of it helped. The signal followed. Sometimes I'll be walking through a grocery store and the PA system will crackle just for a second, and I'll hear it. Elliot. I've unplugged every TV I own, but they still glow faintly at night. I keep my mirrors covered, but sometimes I wake up and they're uncovered again, and my reflection isn't quite right. It smiles too long. It doesn't blink when I do, and when I scream, it keeps its mouth shut. I've learned that 0x13 isn't a channel. It's a threshold, a border between our reality and something else, something that hungers for recognition, something that can't enter our world unless it's seen, heard, believed in. And by listening, I let it in.
Story 4. The Puzzle Box. I've always had a thing for puzzles. Not just jigsaws, but codes, riddles, ciphers, anything that made my brain ache and stretch. As a kid, I was the one who solved the newspaper Sudoku faster than my parents could find their coffee. I wasn't athletic or social, but give me a locked door, a series of symbols, or a pattern no one else could see, and I was in my element. By the time I reached my late 20s, I was deep into what most people would call advanced cryptography. But what I really specialized in was hidden systems, layers behind layers, Easter eggs, defunct domains, sites swallowed by the web's undercurrent. Most of it was harmless fun, unlocking forgotten websites, finding ARGs created by bored programmers, deciphering dead URLs that looped back into themselves like digital Mobius strips. But in late October of 2016, I stumbled upon something that didn't want to be solved, something that was never meant to be touched. It began when I found a comment buried in the source code of an abandoned webcomic site. The comment read, "If you've come this far, you've already opened the first door. See what lies beneath. Vector.black/pb-entry." It was an unlisted link, dead to most search engines. Just text, no images, no style sheets, no formatting. A blank white page with a single prompt, "Enter your name." I hesitated. Usually these things asked for usernames, maybe an alias, but this was different, personal. Curious, I typed, "Aaron." The page blinked once, then loaded what looked like an ancient text adventure game interface. "Welcome, Aaron. Do you wish to play?" There was a yes and a no. I hovered over no just to see what would happen. The moment my cursor touched it, the screen glitched and turned black. Static filled the speakers. Then the screen pulsed red and displayed, "That's not an option anymore." I clicked yes. The screen shifted. A diagram of a box appeared, black lines etched into a white cube, symbols on each side, runes, clock hands, and strange geometric spirals. Below it, a prompt read, "Solve the box." At first, it seemed simple. You clicked the sides of the cube, rotated them, and aligned the symbols in a particular order, but each solution revealed a new layer, more complex than the last. Every time I thought I'd cracked it, the game changed. It was intelligent. It learned how I solved. It adjusted. The difficulty wasn't linear. It evolved. After 3 hours straight, the background began to fade into something darker. The symbols no longer felt abstract. They started to look familiar, like diagrams from old religious manuscripts, like something ancient was watching me through the code. But I couldn't stop. It had its hooks in me. Eventually, I solved what I thought was the final configuration. The cube cracked open, the screen flashed black and white like a strobe, then a message appeared. "The box has opened. Thank you for playing, Aaron. Coordinates: 38.8972 north, 7.0369 west. 1 hour, come alone, bring nothing." I stared at the screen. Those were real coordinates. I checked Google Maps. It pointed to a narrow alley in Washington, D.C., just behind a condemned theater that had been shut for years. I lived in Baltimore. It was only an hour away by car. I should have ignored it. I should have laughed, called it a brilliant prank by some hacker genius who had crafted the ultimate ARG. But deep inside, I felt something shift, like I'd just unlocked something I was never supposed to see. And worse, I felt watched. I closed my laptop, packed a hoodie, and drove. It was past midnight when I arrived. The city was quiet. Fog curled along the pavement. The alley was narrow and dark. A metal gate leaned off its hinges. Beyond it, I found a wooden crate, no bigger than a shoebox, sitting perfectly centered in the path. It had no markings, just a burnished black surface covered in a thin layer of dust. I picked it up. It was cold, much heavier than it looked. I took it home. That was mistake number 2. Once inside, I set the box on my desk and examined it. No hinges, no seams, just a perfectly smooth cube of dark, almost obsidian-like material. but when I touched it, it responded. Faint glowing symbols flickered beneath the surface, only visible from certain angles. I couldn't stop staring at it. That night, I had dreams. I stood in a vast circular chamber filled with hundreds of identical boxes, each pulsed with a low hum like a mechanical heartbeat. Something moved among them, tall, faceless figures cloaked in black, whispering in a language that made my ears bleed even in sleep. When I woke, my nose was bleeding. I should have thrown it away. Instead, I opened my laptop and went back to the site. It was gone, totally wiped. But the box was still on my desk, humming faintly. Over the next few days, things got worse. The lights in my apartment began flickering, always in the presence of the box. Electronics misfired. My phone would glitch, showing pictures of people I didn't know, blurry, twisted faces in dark rooms. The temperature dropped, not just inside me. I felt it. The presence. Whatever had been locked in that digital construct, it had crossed over. Not physically, but through attention, through solving, through understanding. I had been its final key. The dreams turned into visions, waking ones. I'd blink and the world would stutter like a scratched DVD. People's faces would smear, words on signs twisted into symbols from the box. I began hearing whispers when no one was around. They always said the same thing: turn the box. And one night, when I finally did, it opened. Not physically, but somehow my mind entered it. I was no longer in my apartment. I was inside a structure, mechanical yet alive, walls shifting, rooms pulsing with breath. It was infinite, a maze of dimensionless corridors lined with faces trapped behind glass, all screaming silently. And in the center, something waited. It had no name, no face, just a form made of language, of logic. It spoke in riddles, in numbers that rearranged themselves into memories I'd forgotten. It knew everything about me, every fear, every lie, every unsolved question that had haunted my life. And it demanded more. The box wasn't a puzzle. It was a gateway. And I had been the solution. When I came to, hours had passed. My nose was bleeding again. So were my ears. And the box was gone. Not missing. Gone. Like it had never been there. But I wasn't the same. Something had stayed behind. Something inside. Now, when I walk past screens, they flicker with symbols, puzzles no one else sees. I hear voices and static. If I hold my breath long enough, I can still feel the walls of that place. And every few nights, someone leaves a small square package outside my door. Always the same weight, always cold to the touch. I don't open them anymore, but I know what they are. Invitations. Each box is meant for someone else. I wasn't the first. I won't be the last. And the worst part? A small part of me still wants to solve them. But I won't, because now I know. Some puzzles solve you.
Story 5. Forbidden Port. Before everything happened, I worked as a penetration tester for a mid-tier cybersecurity firm. You've probably heard of people like me. White hat hackers paid to break into systems, find vulnerabilities, and then report them before the bad guys can exploit them. It was decent money and deeply satisfying work, especially for someone like me who had always been fascinated by secrets hidden in plain sight. My name was Jonah back then. It's not anymore. Most of our contracts were dry. Companies with poorly configured firewalls, outdated CMS platforms, and lazy admin passwords like welcome123. But once in a while, we'd get an unusual job. The kind where no official paperwork existed, where all the documentation
came from an anonymous client behind a proxy chain and Bitcoin wallet. The kind of job that started with, "We were never here." The job in question came through a private drop server with a single request: explore, map, identify threat level, do not interact. Attached was a URL, just an IP address and a port number, 8088. At first glance, it looked like a test server. No domain, no SSL certificate, nothing to flag it as dangerous, just obscure, abandoned. But as any experienced tester knows, ports tell stories, and 8088 wasn't random. It was often used for backdoor dev environments, forgotten admin panels, hidden staging servers, or rogue applications left live by mistake. So I ran my usual setup: VPN, air-gapped laptop, custom sandbox environment. If anything decided to lash out, it wouldn't touch my real system. I connected. The site loaded instantly. A black screen, no HTML header, just one line of glowing green text, center aligned like an old terminal. "We see you." I laughed, figured it was a joke, maybe one of those creepy ARG rabbit holes that got tossed around deep web forums. I'd seen hundreds of like it. But then the site blinked, and the text changed. "Welcome back, Jonah." I froze. I hadn't entered my name. I hadn't even logged into anything yet. I ran a scan. No cookies, no local storage, no tracking scripts. My real IP was masked. My system name was generic. There was no way this site should have known who I was. The screen blinked again. Proceed. Yes. No. I moved my cursor toward no, but my mouse wouldn't respond. It drifted slowly, unnaturally, toward yes on its own. I yanked the USB power. The screen went black. My sandbox laptop was fried, completely unresponsive. I'd built it to survive state-level intrusions, and this damned 8088 site had cooked it in under 60 seconds. But it wasn't over. That night, things started happening. My phone glitched, flickering static every time I passed a mirror. My smart TV turned on at 3:08 a.m. with no input, displaying lines of green code that flickered for a half second before vanishing. At work, my badge stopped working, even though IT confirmed my credentials hadn't changed. Then, the dreams came. Dark corridors, endless staircases, eyes blinking from the walls. I heard voices calling out numbers, sometimes coordinates, sometimes file paths, and always the same phrase: do not interact. I reached out to an old friend, Z, a retired sysadmin who now lived off-grid. We used to pull late-night pen testing jobs together in our 20s before he disappeared from everything. He was paranoid, brilliant, and one of the few people I trusted with weird digital shit. I told him everything, except my name and location. Just the behavior, the IP, the port, and the strange fallout. After a long pause, he replied with just 3 words. "You opened it." We arranged a call over an encrypted VoIP tunnel. His voice was raspier than I remembered, like he hadn't spoken to another human in days, maybe weeks. He said something I'll never forget. "That port wasn't meant for you, or anyone. It was sealed years ago." He told me about a rumored project, something from the early internet days.
"The next day, I found a USB drive in my coat pocket. I never put it there. It was labeled Port Forward. I don't know what's on it. I haven't plugged it in, but sometimes I hear it hum, like it's calling to something still listening.